Hey, and welcome to Fulbright's ACT Aspire building level procedures for our ACT Aspire testing. This training will go through some of the key ideas for our building details, as well as kind of reinforce some of the training ideas that you heard from Leanda Cleveland. Our first slide here has just some links embedded for some helpful tips and some page numbers for some things that you might want quick access to as a testing coordinator. When we're going through our testing, the first thing we want to know is how we're going to handle our communication. We have a variety of methods for this to occur. One of the ways is that you can always just use your red flag card that you can slide under the door, and we'll have monitors in the hallway to check on you should we see that need. We will also have key people that you will be able to contact through a text message if you have a need for like a restart, if you have a need for the nurse, or just a question on an error message. Those text message or those text numbers will be given out to you. We'll have different people during the different testing. So some for our blended downstairs, blended only, we'll have Ms. Freeman downstairs, and Ms. Hannaford will be for both upstairs for both virtual and blended. On our virtual testing day, Hamby will be your person for contacting on our downstairs area, but she will be in the Murray room during our blended. That's a little confusing, I know, but we'll have it each day. You'll have a slip of paper that has the information that you need and your contact person and the method for contacting those people for frequently asked questions or restart information, those types of things. Of course, if you have an emergency, you can open the door and request assistance. You don't want to walk out of the door, but you can open the door staying inside your classroom and call for assistance. We will have emergency updates going out through our Remind app. If you have not signed up for our Remind app, the join code is listed here. And of course, we will have the daily schedule with information in your testing packets when you pick up each day. It will have frequently asked questions on there, tech tools, all types of different information for you will be available in your testing packet. This is just a slide that kind of gives you some more specifics on what Ms. Cleveland had kind of spoken to you guys about in her training with irregularities versus improprieties. I think most of the people that I spoke to who had already done the training with Ms. Cleveland's training mentioned that basically if there's anything that you think is wrong, you need to make sure you notify me about it. And there will be a slip of paper in your testing materials that will have that information where you can fill that out. So whether it's an irregularity or an impropriety or a violation, any of those things you'll want to record on that slip of paper, and you'll have a new one of those each day. But these were just some kind of ideas for you to look through: students getting sick, technology issues, if cell phones that are seen on the child's person but they weren't accessed, those types of things. If we have weather issues, if we need to pause the test for tornado warning, those types of things. But you'll report all those types of situations and issues in that piece of paper, or you can also talk to me about it and whether you need to write it out. When in doubt, though, turn it in. Of course, we have the bigger improprieties whenever it's failing to provide the allowable accommodations of our students. If we've messed up in that area, if a student's actually using a cell phone, anything that would go against that signed security agreement, those types of things we'll want to make sure and report immediately, both on the form and just to me. I think more often you're going to have a situation that if like a student gets sick and what to do in that situation. So here's some key ideas for that. If a student gets sick, make sure you log them out using the button in the top right of the portal, but do not submit their answers. That can't be undone. Whatever you submit, that will be their score. You'll want to note how much time they have remaining in the testing, and you'll put that on their regularity sheet. So if you have a kid who gets up and runs out the door and is throwing up, just mark the time, and they will be able to finish that testing. Oh, looks like we have an error here. Sorry. Change that real quickly. There we go. And then don't worry about the makeups for that. We will have them make up once they are healthy and ready to test. And we'll just use the remaining time that they had. Again, this is just reiterating that need to report those irregularities and proprieties and violations on using the form. It will go to me, then I will give that information to our district coordinator, which is Leander Cleveland, and then she will either report that to the state or decide if it needs to be reported. So cell phone usage. As we know, no electronic devices of any kind are allowed. We focus on cell phones because that's the electronic device that most of our students have, but we also want to make sure that we're including smartwatches and even a Fitbit device. Those have to be turned off and stored away from the students. So that's something is like have your students they may not think, well, I just have a smartwatch that's, I'll take that off, but their Fitbit device can also receive notifications and information. So we need to make sure and have those off completely. If a student has that on their person, if you notice it in the middle of testing or those types of things, again, just put it on your irregularity form. It's your choice as the testing administrator in the room, whether you want to collect all the cell phones or request that they be placed in the backpacks. Even if they are in backpacks, please double, triple, quadruple check with the kids that they are off. Because if it goes off in their backpack, even if they don't have access to it, that is an irregularity because it's disruptive to the testing environment. So we want to make sure and have those completely off, not just silent. They need to be completely turned off. Any student who violates this policy, you need to talk to your students about this. It will be turned in as an impropriety. The device will be taken up by the test administrator and immediately delivered to school administration. We have to report these things, and there have been times whenever if there's a chance that something was recorded or a photo taken of the test, that the Department of Education has taken that phone up or requested that to be sent in to the state. So we don't want to have anything like that happen. And then students who violate this policy will also be disciplined according to school rules. For staff, this is a building level that we can make our own decisions on how we do that to a certain degree. You must silence your phones. We will allow them to be used. That's going to be one of our methods for communication, but they do need to be silent and the vibration turned off. They're used for the sole purpose of communicating with school testing coordinator or other support staff. So if you need a bathroom break, if you have a technology issue, if someone's test needs to be restarted, resumed, those types of things, you can be sending those through a text message. You'll also be receiving, like we said earlier, the reminds if we have an emergency communication that needs to go out to all staff. In the case of an error on the screen, do not capture a picture of the error. We are so used to using our cell phones in this method. Make sure that you are not. Make sure you're recording the error on paper for communication purposes, but not take a picture of it. And we've already kind of gone over that. It needs to be out of sight for the majority of the time that you're testing. Only pulled out whenever you need it for communication purposes. This happens quite a bit. Once again, we are very used to using our cell phones as timers. Please do not use a cell phone as a timer. It is not allowed. If you need a timer or you need a clock in your room, those types of things, email Miss Shanna Bassett, and we will get one for you and get you hooked up there. With the exception of emergency communication, again, use of electronics device in the hallways outside the testing room. So if you are a testing monitor, if you are a buddy teacher, if you are doing any of those things, you will need to make sure that you are not using your laptop, your smartwatches, your tablets, anything in the hallway for those, for anything that's not related directly to the testing, because that is an irregularity. All right. We could be monitored. Anyone can be monitored at any time, and with our testing, they can show that DESE can come and show up and just ask for to monitor our testing administration in a room, and they will just ask to go into a random room. They might ask you questions once they might interview you. You need to make sure and be able to answer certain questions, and we'll go through that. But they'll make sure that what we're doing is correct and that we have documentation of your trainings, that we're doing the accommodations that are supposed to be done. If you are doing a small group or any sort of accommodation group, you will have in your testing packet every LPAC or IEP or 504, anything that says what the accommodation should be for that student, and be able to point to it and show the testing monitor. You will also have a monitor checklist there that will be available for you to look through. To kind of get some ideas of the type of things that they will ask you. Room supervisor requirements. If you are a testing administrator, you need to be able to say you have all these things. We wouldn't have you in the room if you were not qualified to be an administrator of a test. We have to make sure, though, that non-licensed staff, they can assist, but they cannot be left in the room alone. So you cannot have where you have the students or the testing materials are in the classroom, and you leave the room, and a non-licensed person is there watching them. It has to be a licensed person. You cannot be the parent, guardian, sibling, or relative of a student in the room that you are supervising, and you cannot tutor any of the students. So I believe you've already kind of reached out to you guys and make sure if you have anyone that you are tutoring that you cannot be in the same room with those students. Of course, that's for fees, not for just helping your students before or after school to get some extra help. Breaks for students between sessions. We will have some breaks built in. We'll make sure that there's a difference between a student that has an accommodation for a break. If they have that, a student has frequent breaks accommodation, then you can pause the test. Otherwise, other students if they take we obviously discourage them to go to the bathroom during a testing thing. But if we have an emergency and they need to go to the bathroom, we can't pause the test, but we can send them. But when they leave the room, make sure that you tilt their screen to a 3/4 angle. Do not look at the screen. Do not look at their testing screen at all. And we should not be exiting them, but we cannot give them any extra time if they take a break, if they do not have that accommodation. Each test must be completed in a single sitting. It cannot go over multiple days. Basically, that means that if we start a test, we have to be able to finish it before 3:35. That includes our extended time. We cannot say, oh, you're not finished, we're going to just pause this test and come back tomorrow and finish it up. It has to be done in that same day. Also, make sure that we understand that even if every single person in your classroom has finished the test, you cannot end early. You have to give everyone every minute of the allotted time. However, if you are in an extended time session, you may end before the full extended time if all students have finished and the regular time has passed. So if you have gone past what the schedule has said for them, like if it's a 60-minute test and you have given them 60 minutes and everyone has finished, then you can go ahead and stop before they may still all have more time on their clocks, but you can finish when everyone has finished as long as the regular time has passed. And that's just a list of the times for each of the tests, which will all be included on your testing schedule. We all have to follow the schedule. We can't start early, end early. We can't say, all right, let's go ahead and just get going. We have to follow it and kind of be in sync with the rest of the building, unless you are in an extended time group. They will follow the same schedule as close as possible. But we all have to submit our testing schedule to the state, and if the state comes in, they will be checking to make sure that what our submitted schedule is what's actually happening in the classrooms. All right. So when you are administering the test, do not leave the students unattended for any reasons. Walking out into the hall is leaving them unattended. Again, throw that flag under the door, send a text message, but don't walk out of the door into the hallway, because that leaves them unmonitored. Making sure that each student has the correct test ticket. This is something that happens, according to Ms. Cleveland, quite often, that people are given the wrong testing ticket. So make sure that you are giving and double checking and triple checking that the student's name and the ID number, all those things, match up with that student. When you finish the test administration, make sure that all tests are actually in a submitted format. You can look through each screen and double check with everyone that they have submitted. And then making sure, of course, that your testing materials are secure at all times. You can lock your room or ask a certified staff member to watch them. Do not lock them in there with students as you leave. That's obviously not keeping them monitored. A lot of this, like I said, is common sense, but it's the kind of things that when we're in a hurry or we're not thinking about it, we might make a small mistake, and we want to avoid those as much as possible. Test tickets are secure materials and must be handled as such. Only trained, certified staff may be alone with test tickets. We kind of talked about this earlier, making sure that you have a certified staff member or licensed staff member that's left alone with the testing tickets. Give tickets only to the individual students. Do not allow a student to handle any of the test tickets but their own. So we can't say, hey, pass these out to the group for me. You have to hand those out. Double check that students receive the correct test ticket. If you are unsure, ask for help in identifying a student. I know some of you will have students that you do not know. We work as hard as we can to try to get you with students that you know, but it's not always possible. So if you have a student that you're unfamiliar with, do double check those testing tickets. And again, having a student test under the wrong identity is an impropriety, and it's a pretty big deal, and it's one of the things that happens more often than we would like. Before and during testing, again, we want to make sure that we understand those testing tickets are the secure materials. You will check in and check out materials in upstairs and downstairs workrooms. You're going to count out the number of testing tickets that you are signing for, and then you will initial on the sign out and sign in of the materials form. This is important. You have to read the appropriate verbal instructions from your manual exactly as stated. This is a verbatim reading. We can't change words. We can't move around words. We can't skip over parts of it. We have to read the manual very specifically, word for word, exactly what it says. Students will use their test tickets for scratch paper. Again, this year we will have additional scratch paper, but we don't want to give it to them unless they ask for it, because once they are given that paper, it becomes a secure material. Have them write the student's name on there, the school name, test subject, and grade. This is very rare that students ask for more, but if they do, make sure that you are having them write down that information, and that can be written down after the test has completed to make sure it is on there. We have to turn all of that back in, just like you have to turn in your test tickets, and you have to, when you recount that, you have to turn that in. We'll return all materials to the workroom. We'll have a time on their schedule for this. Supplies pencils to students for use with their scratch paper. We will include those with your testing materials as well. If you are in your own room, make sure that you are covering and removing all materials that could provide aid to the students. You need to try to arrange your computers as much as possible so that students cannot see the screens of other students. And make sure that you have room to circulate among all students in the room. You can't have a section of the room that you cannot actively walk through and monitor. If you're not testing in your room, please ensure all materials are covered. So if someone else is testing in your room, and we do have some specifically more with our virtual testing. We try to get as many people on the first floor as possible, except for our students with accommodations will be on the second floor. We try to separate that as much as possible. But make sure that if you are not in your room, that you still are covering that up for the person that's coming into your room. That's just a courtesy kind of thing to do. Make sure that you have covered up those things. If you need materials for this, we've used newspapers, we've used butcher block paper, but make sure that you have covered everything up that could be seen as an assistance of item of any kind. We are in pretty good shape with our room design just because of our COVID protocols. If you have any questions about how your room is configured, and if you want us to look over that for you, you can definitely ask Ms. Herndon or myself to look at your room. We also have dividers that are available. I know that some people need these more than others, so if you need dividers, we have plenty, and you can email Shanna for dividers. If you are This would be more probably with our science labs if you need those dividers. And I don't think we will need to have more desks in our classrooms that are being used, but we do have a couple of classrooms that we are using for small group that have not been used as a classroom this year due to our smaller population. So we would want to make sure and have, if you need to have desks or chairs in your testing room, double check that. We will send out your numbers, how many you have testing with you soon. I'm not worried about this at all for our virtual, because most of our virtual classes are six to seven students or 2 students in a room. And our blended have, I think max, the biggest group that we have is around 18, 17. Those are our larger. Most of those groups are in the 14 to 15 to 16 kids per classroom. So, but please double check that and get with Miss Herndon if you need more chairs or desks. And it could just be that on those testing days, we move those from one room to another, some excess ones, and we can get that organized for you. Active monitoring, of course, we talked about the circulation and making sure that however the room is set up, that you can move through the room. Make sure that you are routinely walking around and circulating. You may not grade papers, read, work at your computer, or engage in any activity that is not actively monitoring the students. And again, don't leave the students unattended for any reason or step out of your room. Of course, do not read, copy, save, or reproduce any part of the test. Student testing, or questions during testing, this is a pretty common thing that happens. The students may say, like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do here. You can only refer the students to the directions. You can't add or comment on the printed directions. You can't use a different word. You can't, like if it says analyze, or you can't say, well, you know, analyze means this, or you can't give them, you can't paraphrase anything. It has to be exactly what the directions state. And you want to, encourage them to do the best they can without helping them in any way. This is important though, because this does happen and we have these recorded each time. If a student says that a question is incorrect, or they say there is no correct answer, do not look at the question. Just write down on the irregularity form, student noted that question number 42 on the math test does not have a correct answer. That's you can just write those types of things down, because those types of mistakes do happen, but you cannot write down or take a picture or do anything with the actual question itself. Just note it for it to be turned in. Some students want to have the timer up there that tells them, like, kind of a countdown of how much time they have left on their test, and some kids, this really stresses them out. Make sure that you let the students know that they can turn off and on the timer to the test. When the student starts the test, the time will not show, but they can turn on the timer to see it by just clicking on the timer icon. So that's up to them if they want to use that or not. Like we said, sometimes it stresses them to see it, and sometimes it stresses them to not be able to see it. You must log the start and stop times for each session. Please do this on your whiteboards so that the students can see it. It has to be logged. They may not end before the standard session time. We already kind of went over that a little bit. You have this was added a couple years ago. It'll say when you have 5 minutes remaining in the test session, a pop-up box will appear on the screen for the students. We ask them to raise their hand before they submit the final answers. This is where we can kind of encourage them to try harder or go back through and look, make sure that there's anything they want to look at. So we're not having students rush through and submit. Have them raise their hand, and that way you can kind of make sure that what they're doing is correct, and that they haven't, that they're not just turning in or rapid guessing and turning in too fast. Again, if a student needs to see the nurse for illness, send them to the hall, and the hall monitor will write the nurse pass for them and take them. And then you'll mark this down in the irregularity and mark the time that they left the class. Students, of course, may not collaborate or talk while others are testing. Students may not access the computer, internet, or any electronic device after their test is submitted. So if they finish up, they can't get on their phones, they can't get on the book, they can't be working on other assignments, they can't be doing anything but just sitting and reflecting on their performance on the test, hopefully, and trying to, they cannot be working on anything else. And of course, we want to encourage students to use all of their time by reviewing their work before they submit. Some of your students may have an inactivity timer pop up. This is if a student's kind of zoning out, which of course we don't want them to do this. It will log a student out after an inactive period of 20 minutes, but it should have a little box that will pop up for them before then. Hopefully with that monitoring, you can be checking in with students and making sure that no one would be sitting there for that long of a time inactive. All right. This is an important one. Control-Z will undo their last keystroke. So sometimes students accidentally highlight their entire essay or their writing prompt, and then they delete it. We don't want that to happen. So we, if that does happen, try Control-Z. It will undo it. But if they've hit any other keystroke after deleting it, we can't undo it, obviously. So if this happens, if we are 20 minutes into the writing prompt and a student accidentally erases their work and Control-Z doesn't work, note the time, and we can give the students more time to replace their work. So I can add on manually 20 minutes to them, whatever time they lost, they will be able to have that time added back if they accidentally erase their work, okay? And that would just be something that you would mark down on the irregularity, and we would give them that extra time to complete before they submitted. If you have a student that needs to be resumed, then please communicate both their name and testing session name. That will be on their testing ticket. It will literally say the testing session. This is an example of it. You would text to Jenny, if that's your person that we're texting to, you would have resume John Doe, and then you would have the test session name. You can have, there could be a variety of test session names depending on how many groups we have. So that will be specific. So you want to make sure and look at that specifically. All right. If you have accommodations, if you have a small group that you are testing, if you're doing text to speech, if you're doing frequent breaks, any of those types of things, make sure that you look through the accommodations, make sure you're reviewing those. If there's anything that you don't understand what to do with text to speech, you don't understand what to do with any of your accommodations, reach out to me, reach out to Marley, reach out to Miss Hamby, and we will answer any of those questions for you. All right. If a student receives text to speech, make sure you plug in the headphones before logging on and check the volume. Before they get into the test navigation, please make sure that we're checking the volume and making sure that everything works before we're getting into that test. Again, students with text-to-speech and extra time, I don't believe that we have, I've looked through this, but I will double check. I don't think we have any student who has text-to-speech but does not have extra time. So this should not be a worry for you. If that is a situation, I will be having a one-on-one conversation with you, because a student with text-to-speech will automatically get 300% of the time added to their testing score. But if they don't get extra time as an accommodation, you have to stop it and have them submit at the regular time as any other tester. So I don't think we have anybody, but we are getting new students every day, and so this could change. But again, I will have a one-on-one conversation with you to make sure. We cannot give extra time if it is not written in their plan, even if the text-to-speech automatically puts 300% on their testing time. Calculators are allowed for the math test only in grades 6 to 10. That's us, but they cannot use it for the science test. We will be providing some of our students with a handheld calculator for the math test. They, of course, have the calculator available to them on their computer screen, and a lot of kids are very comfortable with this. But we have some other students that have, a specific learning disability in math, that we might want to have a handheld calculator. If they have that, it will be distributed with your testing materials, and you will know that your students will have that available to them. This is more for me than for you. This Proctor password is something, if we have a student that has a technology issue, we need to give them more time. I can add that time on there. If we have extended time student that needs more time to complete the testing, a student may have 150% extra testing time on their IEP, but we absolutely give them the amount of time that they need to finish it beyond that, up until the end of the school day, that is. So if we have a student that needs more time, then we can absolutely add more time on there. But that's something that you don't have to worry about. You would just contact me and I can add that time for you. And you don't have to worry about closing a test session. I will be handling that. Again, when the test monitors, if they come, they might be asking these types of questions. Are you currently licensed or employed under a waiver for licensure? As a teacher of record or administrator, were you trained to administer this exam? This is your training. Who trained you? Renfro and Ms. Cleveland, of course. And where and when was the training done? You would say we completed the training electronically, and the date that you read through that. Again, if you are doing any sort of accommodations, you also want to make sure that you have those, some familiarity with those accommodations, and those again will be in your testing packet, so you don't have to worry about that. It'll be right there available for you to look at. Other things a test monitor will observe and take note of: was the test administered as scheduled? So we have to follow the same building schedule that we turned into the state. Was the learning environment conducive to testing? Like, was it loud? Was there a lawnmower outside? Was there anything like that? Were you reading the directions properly, verbatim from the test manual? Are you walking the room quietly during the testing? Did you follow testing, test security protocols? Those types of things. If we've gone through all of the other slides of this presentation, you should be fine and good to go. For the week of testing, for planning purposes, make sure that we're not doing anything that requires homework or assessments that need to be studied for. We don't want to do anything that would have the kids be up until 10:30 completing a project or working on something that they need to get turned in for homework or project or assessment. You want to focus on enrichment and remediation of skills that we've already taught. You can do new content that week, just nothing that would, or those 2 weeks, but just nothing that takes into or goes overflow into the rest of the day. Again, on the logistics, you'll receive a minute-by-minute schedule that gives daily directions in more detail. Each day, an attendance link email will be sent where you will mark your students absent on a Google Sheet. And if you have any questions about anything with the testing on Friday, April 2nd, I should say, I will be available in my office for all 3 lunches. You can pop in and ask any questions. In the meantime, we have a training that Ms. Freeman put together for us a couple of years ago during seminar on April 9th and the 12th. Please go over the key information. We're asking you to go over on both of those days because it's only about 4 slides, very short. And anyone who is absent on the 9th, we want to make sure that they hear it on the 12th and just have the kids hear it one more time. Virtual reminders will be sent through our Blackboard messaging communication. And so don't worry about communicating these things to your virtual students. Of course, reminding them to get a good night's rest, eat breakfast. Those types of things are always helpful to be reinforced. So we appreciate you doing those types of things. And also, please have students look on the Google Classroom and find their testing location on these days. So during seminar on April 9th and on the 12th, you're going to have them look through. You'll go through the slides that are here for the students' information, and we'll also have them go in their grade level Google Classroom and check for their testing location. If anybody has questions or they can't find themselves on the Google Classroom, the testing location, please notify me immediately so we can get them in the correct place. We will also send out an email that has this link for this training in there as well, so no worries on that. Again, this is the how to sign the security agreement and training verification. You should have already done this for Ms. Cleveland's training. You do not have to do it again for this one, but there's a link here for that information if you need to go in there and get that signed. If you have any questions about her training, of course, you can come and ask me or send an email. So that, as I say, is that. If you have, I know it's a kind of long training, and I apologize for the length. If you have any follow-up questions, reach out, and we can all help you with this. I think we're going to have a good, solid testing season, and we'll get through this and move into our MAP testing. Again, I thank you for your attention today and for your hard work in making sure that we follow all the testing protocols put forth by our district and state. I know we'll have some good results due to your diligence and your hard work this year. Thanks so much, guys.